right, in this video, we are going to continue with data types and some predefined functions. Those are going to be very similar to each other and they're kind of connected. That is why I put them side by side. First of all, let's talk about the data types that we know so far. We know two groups of data types. The first group are numeric data types, float and integers. And then the second group that we talked about so far are, one of them is a string type. With a string type, which is type of a sequence, we have a bunch of characters as long as you put them inside quotations as matching quotations, single or double quotations. And basically with sequences, what we have is the values that you have in a sequence, they come in a specific order. And all of the elements are connected to each other depending on the order they come, right? So with strings, you have, for instance, hello world, and you know H is coming before E, and then so on and so forth. So all of the characters have their own specific order, and they come and they create that sequence for you. So today we are going to learn about two other sequences or two other data types. And the data types that we have also have their functions. Similar to here, you have function int, float, and string, which allows you to go from one type to the other. So you do the typecasting using the function that we have for those specific data types. The two new data types that we are going to learn today, they also have their functions, they have their predefined function that allow you to go from one type to the other type. Okay, now let's get started. Let's start with the name. So the first one is called, if I can type here, is called list, and then second one is called tuple or tuple. And then their function is basically the same thing. So we have list, open and close parentheses, and then we have tuple or tuple, open and close parentheses, right? We're going to learn more about how to use them, how to create them, and so on and so forth. So let's go back to the data type first. We are going to focus on the data types for as long as we need, and then we're gradually going to move on to the predefined function that we have. So when we're creating a string, we use the quotation, the matching quotation, to create a string for ourselves. When you're creating a list, we are going to use square brackets to do that for us. So whatever you put inside the square bracket, it is going to be part of your list. And then for tuple, you're going to use parentheses. So far we know what we need to use to create the sequence that we want. So again, a string, you use quotations. For list, you use square brackets. And then for tuple, you use parentheses. Okay, now let's get into what a list is and how we create that. And then we are going to move to tuple after that. But if you understand how lists work and how we create a list, defining a tuple is going to be much easier. So the concept of the list is very similar to the concept of everyday list that you use. Like for instance, to-do list that you have. You have a bunch of items in your to-do list and you want to basically go through them. So you have multiple items in that sequence. They have an order. You have a first item, you have a second item, third item, and so on and so forth. So let's get into how lists are created. We are going to start with the definition for the list, and then I'm going to show you how to create it in Python. We are going to do some examples on it. So a list in Python is a mutable linear data structure of variable lengths allowing mixed type elements. We are going to get into every single word that we have in that definition. A list in Python is mutable linear data structure, basically very similar, another definition, denoted by comma separated list of elements within a square brackets allowing mixed type elements. So two different definitions for list. And then for tuple, we have a similar definition. So a tuple in Python is immutable linear data structure denoted by a comma separated list of elements within parentheses allowing mixed type element. So the difference, as you see, the difference between a list and tuple is that word mutable versus immutable. And we're going to talk about that a lot, and that is a significant difference between the two. And it comes very important as we get into the problem solving aspect of the course. But for now, just understand one is mutable, one is immutable. The rest of it is exactly the same between list and tuple. Both are going to hold multiple values of mixed type elements, and both are a type of data structure. Okay, now let's get into just a general form of a list. All right, here for instance, I draw very badly a list of different items. One of the lines here is missing. So let's see if I can draw that line here. Okay, so this list that I created has 4 different places in it, 4 different boxes in it. And it allows you to store different values inside each of those boxes. So for instance, I can put 5 in the first box. I can put 6 here. I can put this character A, and I can put 2.5 in here. So the values that I picked are significant because I want to get into all of those single words that we had in the definition for lists and tuples. So first of all, you can have multiple values in a list or in a tuple. They can be of mixed type variables, like different data types. So I have an integer here, I have a string, I have a float type. You can have a list inside a list, or a list inside a tuple, or a tuple inside a list. So you can, the elements that you have in a list or in tuple can be different types. That's okay. It allows you to do that. In most cases, you have one data type in your entire list or entire tuple, but nothing prevents you from having different data types as different elements inside your list or in your tuple. So the other thing that is important here is lists are linearly ordered. That means you have first item, you have second item, third item, fourth item, and so on and so forth, depending on how many items you have inside your list or inside your tuple. In Python, in most programming languages, the items inside your list or tuples or inside your linear data structures are zeroed index. That means the indexing starts from 0. If you want to know, okay, instead of saying this is the so for all of your first items, you're going to have a number associated with that, which is 0 in Python. So you know this 0 points to the first item that you have in your list or inside your tuple. 1 points to the second item inside your list. 2 points to the third item inside your list or inside your tuple or inside your sequence in general, because they are linear data structures. Okay, so it is just 0 index. That means if this is the first item, you subtract 1 from it, and that gives you the index number. And the index numbers are very important because it allows you to access different items inside your list or inside your tuple, inside your sequence. Okay, for instance, let's say you have a list with 100 items in the list, and you want to get the 50th item in that list. So what you say is, okay, I want the value inside the index number 49 because the 50th item is going to have index number, the value that you have minus 1 gives you the index number. So if it's the 50th item, that means 50 minus 1, that is index number 49. And that is a way for you to access the element. So basically sequences that we have are very similar to other data types that we had. If you want to create a variable, and we talked about this concept of, okay, having a box, and inside that box you can store something. With sequences, your box has sectioning in it. So you have different sections inside that box, and then you can put different elements in each of those sections. And then sections are ordered. So you know exactly, okay, this is my first section, this is my second section, this is my third section, and you put the elements or the values that you want inside that box with the order they come. And you always go from the beginning of it and start filling it out, okay? You never go randomly and putting stuff in it. You always start filling from the beginning, from the first box, first section that you have, which is index number 0. Okay, so now let's get into Python and start creating different lists and tuples and general different sequences, and start accessing different elements in them. Okay, again, we are going to start in the shell and then have our shell practice in there, and then when we are ready, we are going to go back to our program and write some simple program in there. Okay, so first we are going to create a list. So for lists, we know we need to have square brackets, and then all of the elements in the list or in your sequence are going to be comma separated, right? That is another part of the definition. All of the elements are comma separated. So if I have 4 elements inside my list, I need to have 3 comma to separate them from each other. So for instance, I have 7, I have value 2, I have value 5, and I have value 10. And these items are separated by the commas that I put between them. So if you have 4 elements, you need 3 commas to separate them from each other. Okay, so that is the list that you have, and if I press enter, that is the list. Okay, so similar to the previous data types that we had, if you want to reuse this data, you need to store it. You need to create it and put it inside a variable to be able to access it. You need to give that an identifier, give it a name. So you say, okay, I want this box. I want to open this box that has different sections in it, and I want to do something with it, right? We get into how we can middle with a list or a tuple and like do stuff with it later on. But for now, let's create a variable that is type list. So I'm going to call this one a sequence, SEQ, and I'm going to say equal to, and I'm going to store this exact same thing in it, all right? And press enter, and then if I say, okay, what is my sequence? It's going to give me that sequence, right? So if you want to have a sequence that is a different type, you can do that. Now I'm creating a tuple because I have parentheses, and I can store different values in it. So right now I have a string A. I'm going to store number 2, and I'm going to have 5.1 in it. So I have a string, an integer, and a float inside my tuple. Okay, so what is my sequence? This is my sequence. And you can always use this type function to request the type of the variable that you have. So it's telling you this sequence is type tuple. If I go back to this first one, this one was type list, and if I say, okay, what is the type of this sequence? Because I overwrote that sequence, the previous one, now my current sequence is type list. So if I ask for the type, it's going to be type list. One thing that I want you to avoid by all means is, I have seen it a lot that students use this variable, this name, as the variable name for their list. This is a very, very bad practice, because if you, like, first of all, as soon as you use this one, it turned purple. That means it is a predefined function. It's not going to prevent you from using that function as a variable name, but what you have done at this point is you have overwritten the list function. So right now, the list function is not going to work anymore because you said, okay, ignore that list function, override it with this data. So you're losing that function, that predefined function altogether. An example of that is here. So I have this print function, and I'm going to say, okay, print hello world. So if you're printing hello world, everything is fine, everything is working. And now, for some reason, I decide to use this print as a variable name. So I'm going to say, okay, let's just store A to it. So now my print is, instead of print function, is going to be this variable A. Python is say, okay, you know better than me, so you want to overwrite this predefined function? Good, I'm not going to stop you. But you change that. Now, if I redo this exact same line, it's going to give me an error message because predefined function print doesn't exist anymore. I have overwritten that. I have deleted that function. It cannot print anything for you anymore because now print is just a simple variable that holds this string A. It goes to every single function that we have. Anything that turns purple, don't use that as a variable name. There's so many other options. If you really like to have this word list inside your variable name, just vary it somehow, like list 1, list 2, my list. So anything else that you want that is not the exact word list, you can use that as a variable name. So create a variation of that name for yourself if you really want that name list inside your variable name. But please do not use anything that turns purple as a variable name. Okay, so in this video, again, we just simply created 2 different data types. We created a list, and then we created a tuple up here. And then again, going back to the definition, we know that lists are linear data structure of variable lengths allowing mixed type elements, and we practice with that. So we know we can have as many values inside a list or inside a tuple. We practice having mixed type elements inside the list, inside a tuple. So you can do all of that. Later on in other videos, I'm going to get into this mutable versus immutable part of it. But in this video, I'm going to keep it short and just like trying and practicing with creating lists and tuples.